Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Life of Key, early bird of the day. Let us all give her a round of clips. Not clips, what do you call it? Snaps. A round of snaps for the early bird, Life of Key. Eric Brene Vlogs, a round of snaps for the early birds. Don't ask me why, but I'm feeling jazzy today. Welcome to the live. Today, we're going to be doing some reading of the Bible, because that's what I do in the morning. Read the Bible. For the year 2020, I can see clearly now that I'm reading my word. This is the time where I obviously don't have on my my earlier thing, my little bookmark. Don't have on my bookmark as I'm sharing out my live all out in the open. Supposed to put my bookmark on there, but not bookmark, my little wallpaper. But in either case, welcome. So I had this whole little thing planned. I was gonna go ka-chow, ka-chow, ka-chow. Let's chop it up in the Bible, but I messed it up because I didn't put my wallpaper up there. In either case, good morning, good morning. Now is the time, as I was about to say, that I share out the live, and this will be a great opportunity for you to do so as well if you have the means. Other than that, give me un momento, por favor, while I do just that. Oh, I know why I had the camera on first, because I was checking out the look. Well, you guys got a sneak peek, but you can't look no more. Can't be giving a sneak peek when I'm doing my behind the scenes. How is everybody today? Happy Witness Day. Happy Witness Day. Whew. Another cold and rainy day here in Fort Worth, Texas. I like to drive slow and easy as I make my way here, so I can make it in one piece. Make it back the same way that I left out. How is the weather in the respective cities, counties, and states of the early birds and anybody else who may be in the live, because I'm not looking right at the screen anymore. But how's the weather where you guys are at? I think we're going to be under some pretty cool weather for the rest of the week, which is not completely uncommon, but I mean, when it's warm here around this time, it's not a surprise either. All right, it's almost 7:15. Well, it's 7:11, so I'm gonna wait just a little bit longer, let some folks get their notifications, come in, get settled in, and then we will chop it up in Leviticus. Now that I know where that comes from, I'm tempted to say Leviticus, but it's Leviticus, named after the tribes of the people of the Levites, Levi. I should have guessed that too. I read it a couple of weeks ago, but it just didn't click. I mean, it's not like I read my Bible all the time. For the most part, all this is pretty new to me. Some of it is a refresher from Sunday school, but a lot of this is new to me, so I won't kick myself too much for not realizing that. Besides, it's always a nice and refreshing surprise when all of a sudden something dawns on you that you've kind of known for a while, but you didn't put the pieces together. So, yeah. As I'm learning different things in the Bible, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's where that came from. Yeah, pretty cool. All right, without further ado, let's do what we do and do it right now. I think I'm going to watch on my phone, unless my phone's going to... Hooray, my phone's not going to die today. It means I can actually watch the chat on my phone while I'm conducting business. Alright, now we can do the official intro. Y'all caught me off guard. You guys were sneak peeking. Ka-chow, ka-chow, ka-chow. That's what I was gonna do. I was gonna be like, ka-chow, ka-chow, ka-chow. Just chop it up, chop it up. That's what I was going to do, but I did it anyway, so it worked out. While I'm conducting business. See, I don't hear the static. I don't hear the static, but it sounds warbly to me. I don't know if it's because I'm listening to it so close to the mic or what, but if there's ever issue with the sound, you guys, let me know, let me know, let me know. I've learned my lesson not to use Internet Explorer, so I won't be doing it anymore because that's where the static was coming from. I thought it was coming from a little soundproof room. I thought something was, going on in there. But no, it was Internet Explorer. But it's good that it got me out in the open, so I'm happy to be in a more wide open space, more comfortable out here. I liked it out there with my kitties too, but the cats, well, you guys know how that was going. All right, now I can see my chat room. I can see myself. Yep, I can see myself. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Today is February 12th, 2020. It is Wednesday. We are in week 7 of reading the Bible in a year, where I am picking up in the book of Leviticus, chapters 4 through 6. Yes, chapters 4 through 6 using the New Believer's Bible Compact Version, New Living Translation. This link is in the description if you want to check it out. Also using A Woman's Guide to Reading the Bible in a Year by Diane Stortz, which is also in the description if y'all want to check it out. Quick recap of yesterday. Real quick recap of yesterday. So yesterday was chapter 1 of Leviticus, which, according to this little blurb at the top, Leviticus deals with the worship of a holy God. Here God gave the priests and the people rules to live by so they could present themselves holy before him. I gotta be honest with you, so far it sounds a lot like Exodus, like right toward the middle toward the end of Exodus, when God was given the blueprint of the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant and the courtyard and the priest garb. A lot of this sounds pretty familiar, but that's what it's starting off talking about: the burnt offering in chapter 1, the grain offering in chapter 2, the peace offering in chapter 3, and that was it. Right, that was it. That was 1, 2, and 3. Today is chapter 4, procedures for the sin offering. I didn't even know there was that many types of sin offering: burnt offering, grain offering, peace offering, sin offering, and I think, was it last week or the week before, or whenever we were in Exodus, talking about a liquid offering. Like I didn't even know there was a thing. Okay, procedures for the sin offering starts now. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Give the following instructions to the people of Israel. This is how you are to deal with those who sin unintentionally by doing anything that violates one of the Lord's commands. If the high priest sins, bringing guilt upon the entire community, he must give a sin offering for the sin he has committed. He must present to the Lord a young bull with no defects. A young bull, not a sheep, not a goat, not a bird. What was the other one? What was the other one? Something from the flock. Okay. If the high priest sins, bringing guilt upon the entire community, so my takeaway from that is he is held more accountable than everybody else because he's one of the leaders. He must bring a sin offering for the sin he has committed. He must present to the Lord a young bull with no defects. He must bring the bull to the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle, lay his hand on the bull's head, and slaughter it before the Lord. The high priest will then take some of the bull's blood into the tabernacle, dip his finger in the blood, and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the inner curtain of the sanctuary. The priest will then put some of the blood on the horns of the altar for fragrant incense that stands in the Lord's presence inside the tabernacle. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar for burnt offerings at the entrance of the tabernacle. Then the priest must remove all the fat of the bull to be offered as a sin offering. This includes all the fat around the internal organs, the 2 kidneys and the fat around them near the loins, and the long lobe of the liver. He must remove these along with the kidneys, just as he does with the cattle offered as a peace offering, and burn them on the altar of burnt offerings. But he must take whatever is left of the bull, its hide, meat, head, legs, internal organs, and dung, and carry it away to a place outside the camp that is ceremonially clean, the place where the ashes are dumped. There, on the ash heap, he will burn it on a wood fire. Yeah, you probably wouldn't want that stuff burning inside a enclosure like a tent. If the entire Israelite community sins by violating one of the Lord's commands, but the people don't realize it, they are still guilty. When they become aware of their sin, the people must bring a young bull as an offering for their sin and present it before the tabernacle. The elders of the community must then lay their hands on the bull's head and slaughter before the Lord. The high priest will then take some of the bull's blood into the tabernacle, dip his finger in the blood, and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the inner curtain. He will then put some of the blood on the horns of the altar for fragrant incense that stands in the Lord's presence inside the tabernacle. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar for burnt offerings at the entrance of the tabernacle. Then the priest must remove all the animal's fat and burn it on the altar, just as he does with the bull offered as a sin offering for the high priest. Through this process, the priest will purify the people, making them right with the Lord, and they will be forgiven. Then the priest must take what is left of the bull and carry it outside the camp and burn it there, just as is done with the sin offering for the high priest. This offering is for the sin of the entire congregation of Israel. If one of Israel's leaders sins by violating one of the commands of the Lord, his God, but doesn't realize it, he is still guilty. When he becomes aware of his sin, he must bring as his offering a male goat with no defects. So that's a step down, right? Because a bull is a large beast. A goat, somewhat smaller. He must lay his hand on the goat's head and slaughter it at the place where the burnt offerings are slaughtered before the Lord. This is an offering for his sin. Then the priest will dip his finger in the blood of the sin offering and put it on the horns of the altar for burnt offerings. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Then he must burn all the goat's fat on the altar, just as he does with the peace offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the leader from his sin, making him right with the Lord, and he will be forgiven. If any of the common people sin by violating one of the Lord's commands, but they don't realize that they are still guilty, when they become aware of their sin, they must bring as an offering for their sin a female goat with no defects. Common people. Common people. Well, what did I just read? High priest. The entire Israelite community. So verse 13, if the entire Israelite community sins. And now in verse 27, if any of the common people. If any of the common people. So is this not the Israelites? Or are they just saying like one of the Israelites? If any of the common people sin by violating one of the Lord's commands, but they don't realize that they're still guilty, when they become aware of their sin, they must bring as an offering for their sin a female goat with no defects. They must lay a hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter it at the place where the burnt offerings are slaughtered. Then the priest will dip his finger in the blood and put it on the horns of the altar for the burnt offerings. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Then he must remove all the goat's fat, just as he does with the fat of the peace offering. He will burn the fat on the altar, and it will be a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Through this process, the priest will purify the people, making them right with the Lord, and they will be forgiven. If the people bring a sheep as their sin offering, it must be a female with no defects. They must lay a hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter it at the place where the burnt offerings are slaughtered. Then the priest will dip his blood in the blood of the sin offering and put it on the horns of the altar for the burnt offering. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Then he must remove all the sheep's fat, just as he does with the fat of a sheep presented as a peace offering. He will burn the fat on the altar on top of the special gifts presented to the Lord. Through this process, the priest will purify the people from their sin, making them right with the Lord, and they will be forgiven. Chapter 5, Sins Requiring a Sin Offering. Yeah, I really would like to know. What are all these different offerings? Procedures for the peace offering yesterday. Today, procedures for the sin offering. If you are called to testify about something you have seen or that you know about, it is sinful to refuse to testify, and you will be punished for your sin. Or suppose you unknowingly touch something that is ceremonially unclean, such as the carcass of an unclean animal. When you realize what you've done, you must admit your defilement and your guilt. This is true whether it is a wild animal, a domestic animal, or an animal that scurries along the ground. Or suppose you unknowingly touch something that makes a person unclean. When you realize what you've done, you must admit your guilt. Or suppose you make a foolish vow of any kind, whether its purpose is for good or for bad. When you realize its foolishness, you must admit your guilt. When you become aware of your guilt in any of these ways, you must confess your sin. Then you must bring to the Lord as penalty for your sin a female from the flock, either a sheep or a goat. This is a sin offering with which the priest will purify you from your sin, making you right with the Lord. And in the little postscript, it says, or will make atonement for you for your sin. That's another way to say it. Will make atonement for you and your sin. Okay. Verse 7, but if you cannot afford to bring a sheep, you may bring to the Lord 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons as the penalty for your sin. One of the birds will be for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering. You must bring them to the priest, who will present the first bird as the sin offering. He will wring its neck but without severing its head from the body. Then he will sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering against the sides of the altar, and the rest of the blood will be drained out at the base of the altar. This is an offering for a sin. The priest will then prepare the second bird as a burnt offering. Following all the procedures that have been prescribed, through this process, the priest will purify you from your sin, making you right with the Lord, and you will be forgiven. I'm going to take a pause for the cause because I really want to know, what is the difference between burnt offering and sin offering? What is the difference between burnt and sin offering? Because I'm reading it and I'm seeing that there are different procedures, and it seems like there are different sacrifices made for it. But I mean, burnt offering and sin offering. I would like to use a reputable site. But I'm going to have to grab a real quick one from Wikipedia, because the top one was Quora, And I don't know how much salt I put on Korah. Okay, sin and burnt offerings from betemuna.org. Ooh, that sounds real official, doesn't it? Betemuna. It looks like a Jewish word and it had like some Hebrew script to the side. That sounds pretty official. I prefer to go with that one than with Wikipedia. Not saying that there's anything wrong with Wikipedia, but Wikipedia is a collab effort with anybody and everybody just putting in information. In this study, I would like to look more closely at the sin and burnt offering. Don't worry, I'm going to share. Here we go. This is betemuna.org. Sin and Burnt Offerings by Rabbi Dr. Hillel Ben David. In this study, I would like to look more closely at the sin offering and the burnt offering. The burnt offering atones for sinful thoughts and for neglecting the performances of the positive commandments. Okay? Positive commandments. So you should do this and you should do this. Okay? The sin offering, wait. The burnt offering atones for sinful thoughts. Okay? So I'm thinking sinful thoughts, which we're doing all the time. I mean, as long as you have thoughts in your brain, some of them are going to be sinful. So the burnt offering atones or makes right for sinful thoughts and for neglecting the performance of positive commandments. The sin offering atones for the commission of unintentional sins, provided the sins are so severe that the transgressor would be liable to the penalty of karet. Don't know what that is? Extirpation had he committed them intentionally. Okay. God would prefer that we transgress no sins at all, and hence render needless the entire institution of atonement sacrifices. This looks like a good site for me to come back to later for me to get some deeper understanding, but I just wanted to do a real quick comparison of sin and burnt offerings. So thank you and credit given to Rabbi Dr. Hillel Ben David, maybe with help from Greg Killian. So yeah, when you don't do what you know you should do, or you have sinful thoughts, which we all do, that is the burnt offering. That would probably be more common, I guess. And when you absolutely do something that you know is wrong or was unintentionally wrong, sin offering. Okay, now that that's cleared up, back to the lab again. Gonna chop it up in Leviticus. All right. The whiz pops in while I was away for a moment. Good morning. I was trying to figure something out because we are in Leviticus and we're talking about procedures for the sin offering and procedures for the yesterday was procedures for the peace offering, which I didn't look that up, but procedures for the sin offering. And then we were also at some point talking about burnt offerings, maybe not. But I wanted to know what the difference was. There's lots of different offerings that I did not realize. Peace offering, sin offering. Looks, if I'm scanning ahead, sin offering, guilt offering, ordination offering, grain offering, peace offering. So yeah. So if I can remember, I will put the link to that website that I just checked out. So if anybody wants to check it out later and do a little bit more study on their own, they can follow that link. Let's see, get back to where I was, which I think I was over here in verse 32. I'm in chapter 4 of Leviticus, and I believe I'm going to pick it up in verse 32. Yeah, I think I might be reading this over. If the people bring a sheep as their sin offering, it must be a female with no defects. They must lay a hand on the head of the sin offering. Sin offering, you did wrong. Now, whether it was intentional or not, and slaughter it at the place where burnt offerings are slaughtered. Then the priest will dip his finger in the blood of the sin offering and put it on the horns of the altar for burnt offerings. He will pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Then he must remove all the sheep's fat, just as he does with the fat of a sheep presented as a peace offering. He will burn the fat on the altar on top of the special gifts presented to the Lord. Through this process, the priest will purify the people from their sin, making them right with the Lord, and they'll be forgiven. All right. Chapter 5, Sins Requiring a Sin Offering. I feel like I read that already, didn't I? I did. Yes, I read chapter 5, Sins Requiring a Sin Offering. If you can't afford to, bring 2 turtle doves. I don't know how I got 1 page behind. All right, let me pick it up in verse 11 then. This is Leviticus 5, verse 11. If you can't afford to bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, because that was the alternative, if you can't bring, a sheep, you may bring 2 quarts of choice flour for your sin offering. Since it is an offering for your sin, you must not moisten it with olive oil or put any frankincense on it. Take the flour to the priest, who will scoop out a handful as a representative portion. He will burn it on the altar on top of the special gifts presented to the Lord. It is an offering for sin. Through this process, the priest will purify those who are guilty of any of these sins, making them right with the Lord, and they will be forgiven. The rest of the flour will belong to the priest, just as with the grain offering. And in verse 14, procedures for the guilt offering. Then the Lord said to Moses, if one of you commits a sin by unintentionally defiling the Lord's sacred property, you must bring a guilt offering to the Lord. The offering must be your own ram with no defects, or you may buy one equal value with silver as measured by the weight of a sanctuary shekel. You must make restitution for the sacred property you have harmed by paying for the loss, plus an additional 20%. When you give the payment to the priest, he will purify you with the ram sacrificed as a guilt offering, making you right with the Lord, and you will be forgiven. Suppose you sin by violating one of the Lord's commands. Even if you are unaware of what you've done, you are guilty and will be punished for your sin. For a guilt offering, you must bring to the priest your own ram with no defects, or you may buy one of equal value. Through this process, the priest will purify you from your unintentional sin, making you right with the Lord, and you will be forgiven. This is a guilt offering, for you have been guilty of an offense against the Lord. Violated one of the Lord's commands. Guilt offering. If any of the common people sin by violating one of the Lord's commands, is in verse 27. Suppose you sin by violating one of the Lord's commands. So there is a distinction. There is a distinction in chapter 4, verse 27. If any of the common people sin by violating one of the Lord's commands. And then skipping ahead back to 5, because now God is talking to Moses. He's one of the chosen. He's with the tribe of Israel, one of the Israelites. Suppose you sin by violating one of the Lord's commands. Okay. So this is a sin offering, and this is a guilt offering. Okay. Suppose you sin by violating one of the Lord's commands. Even if you're unaware of what you've done, you are guilty and will be punished for your sin. For a guilt offering, you must bring to the priest your own ram with no defects, or you may buy one of equal value. Through this process, the priest will purify you from your unintentional sin, making you right with the Lord, and you will be forgiven. This is a guilt offering, for you have been guilty of an offense against the Lord. All right. Is everybody clear on that? Because I had to switch back and forth to see. Let's see, the Wiz says, yes, you mentioned in the last chapter of burning the fat, which is supposedly a sweet smell. I read that somewhere in the Combined Bible Dictionary. All right. Thank you for that insight. Chapter 6 is sins requiring a guilt offering. Sins requiring a guilt offering. Then the Lord said to Moses, suppose one of you sins against your associate and is unfaithful to the Lord. Suppose you cheat in a deal involving a security deposit, or you steal or commit fraud, or you find lost property and lie about it, or you lie while swearing to tell the truth, or you commit any other such sin. If you have sinned in any of these ways, You are guilty. You must give back whatever you stole or the money you took by extortion or the security deposit or the lost property you found or anything obtained by swearing falsely. You must make restitution by paying the full price plus an additional 20% to the person you have harmed. On the same day, you must present a guilt offering. As a guilt offering to the Lord, you must bring to your priest your own ram with no defects, or you may buy one of equal value. Through this process, the priest will purify you before the Lord, making you right with him, and you will be forgiven for any of these sins you've committed. Further instructions for the burnt offering is in verse 8. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Give Aaron and his sons the following instructions regarding the burnt offering. The burnt offering must be left on top of the altar until the next morning, and the fire on the altar must be kept burning all night. In the morning, after the priest on duty has put on his official linen clothing and linen garments, he must clean out the ashes of the burnt offer and put them beside the altar. Then he must take off these garments, change back into his regular clothes, and carry the ashes outside the camp to a place that is ceremonially clean. Meanwhile, the fire on the altar must be kept burning. It must never go out. Each morning, the priest will add fresh wood to the fire and arrange the burnt offering on it. He will then burn the fat of the peace offering. Remember, the fire must be kept burning on the altar at all times. It must never go out." In verse 14, there's further instruction for the grain offering. These are the instructions regarding the grain offering. Aaron's sons must present this offering to the Lord in front of the altar. Aaron's sons only do the grain? Because this is the first time I'm really hearing them being mentioned. No, the burnt offering. But they weren't mentioned for the sin and the guilt offering. Because those went straight to the priest, right? Yeah, the other ones were brought to the priest. As a guilt offering to the Lord, you must bring to the priest your ram with no defects. But for the grain offering, I noticed it's Aaron's and his sons. And for the burnt offering, it's Aaron's and his sons. Okay. Starting over with 14. These are the instructions regarding the grain offering. Aaron's sons must present this offering to the Lord in front of the altar. The priest on duty will take from the grain offering a handful of the choice flour moistened with olive oil, together with all the frankincense. He will burn this representative portion on the altar as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Aaron and his sons may eat the rest of the flour, but it must be baked without yeast and eaten in a sacred place within the courtyard of the tabernacle. Remember, it must never be prepared with yeast. I have given it to the priest as their share of the special gifts presented to me. Like the sin offering and the guilt offering, it is most holy. Any of Aaron's male descendants may eat from the special gifts presented to the Lord. This is their permanent right from generation to generation. Anyone or anything that touches these offerings will become holy. What is it with the yeast, though? Why must it not rise? Why can't it? I mean, is that a form of, like, food processing? Like, just simple and plain? I really do need to look that up. Verse 19 talks about procedures for the ordination offering. Then the Lord said to Moses, "On the day Aaron and his sons are anointed, they must present to the Lord a grain offering of 2 quarts of choice flour, half to be offered in the morning and half to be offered in the evening. It must be carefully mixed with olive oil and cooked on a griddle. Then slice this grain offering and present it as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. In each generation, the high priest who succeeds Aaron must prepare this same offering. It belongs to the Lord and must be burned up completely. This is a permanent law. All such grain offerings of a priest must be burned up entirely. None of it may be eaten." Further instructions for the sin offering is given in verse 24. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Give Aaron and his sons the following instructions regarding the sin offering. The animal given as an offering for sin is a most holy offering, and it must be slaughtered in the Lord's presence at the place where the burnt offerings are slaughtered. The priest who offers the sacrifice as a sin offering must eat his portion in a sacred place within the courtyard of the tabernacle. Anyone or anything that touches the sacrificial meat will become holy. If any of the sacrificial blood splatters on a person's clothing, the soiled garment must be washed in a sacred place. If a clay pot is used to boil the sacrificial meat, it must then be broken. If a bronze pot is used, it must be scoured and thoroughly rinsed with water. Any male from a priest's family may eat from this offering. It is most holy, but the offering for sin may not be eaten if its blood was brought into the tabernacle as an offering for purification. In the holy place, it must be completely burned with fire. Burn up all that sin. That concludes today's reading of Leviticus 4, 5, and 6. Tomorrow is further instructions for the guilt offering, peace offering, the forbidden blood and fat portion for the priests. Yeah, this is seems like quite a bit more detail of what to do. This is like more procedural stuff. Ooh, juicy stuff happening in chapter 14. Interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, we have concluded today's reading. Thank you so much for taking time out to listen to me read my Bible, as that is my New Year's resolution. And yes, I'm very happy that I'm staying consistent with this one thing, because there are so many things, but this is at the top, as it should be, literally and figuratively. Thank you so much to my special guest, Early Bird Life of Key, Erica Brene Vlogs, who, if I remember, today is Wednesday. So I'm going to keep an eye out on your channel, because I think you might put something out today, right? And if not, then I'll still be keeping an eye out when you do. Special thanks to The Wiz and for all the folks chilling in the background, like Silent Bob. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you being here anyways. Even if you didn't say anything, thumbs up. Thumbs up. If you haven't thumbs up already, thumbs up. Thumbs up. How do you say? Well, anyways, you know what I'm trying to say. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. It is now time to get up off of that thing. And no, I'm just kidding. Now it's time for me to go take my daughter to school. So thank you, Lord, for this moment. Oh, yeah, there's my alarm telling me to go take my daughter to school. Thank you, Lord, for this moment. Thank you for bringing me safely home. Oh, thank you for my safe travels to and from work. Thank you for my followers that come in and listen to me read the Bible. Thank you for my continued discipline to read the Bible, because it has been difficult sometimes and me not want to. And if that is a sin, Lord, please forgive me. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. Everybody be blessed today, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow. You know where you guys are going to see me? On Entrepreneur Drive 40, Entrepreneur Drive. Entrepreneur Drive 40, Entrepreneur Drive. Entrepreneur Drive 40, Entrepreneur Drive. So thanks for watching, share, like, and subscribe. One of these days I'm going to get an instrumental in the background. Y'all going to be like, ooh, that's so cool. But until then, I got to do it a cappella.
Thanks. Don't forget to follow me on social media.